We're watching the legal breakdown. Glenn, the biggest news in the nomination space right now is that Matt Gaetz has been nominated by Donald Trump as Attorney General. So first and foremost, how seriously are you taking this nomination?
Not very seriously. You know, my $1 betting limit, Brian, I think I would put about 75 cents of my maximum bet on Gaetz' name being withdrawn. I don't even think he makes it to the confirmation hearings, but if he does, it will be a bloodbath, you know, based on some of what we know Gaetz has done and advocated for over his career. Now, I mean, I take it seriously because it sends a message to not only the good people of the United States, the good people of the Department of Justice and the world, that somebody who was investigated by the FBI for sex trafficking allegations, and, you know, even though it's important to add when we talk about the fact that he was investigated, that the Department of Justice never moved on to indicting him. What was part and parcel of that investigation? Well, a federal judge signed a search warrant. Why? Because there was evidence to support a probable cause showing that there was crime in Matt Gaetz' cell phone. So a federal judge signed a search and seizure warrant. This was no witch hunt of Matt Gaetz. So he is not exactly the kind of guy you want heading up the Department of Justice for lots of reasons, and we can talk about what those reasons are. But here is one of my main concerns, Brian. If he were ever sitting in the office of the Attorney General, I suspect one of the first things he might do is order that his underlings bring him his criminal file, all of the evidence that was amassed during the investigations of his alleged crimes. And what would he have access to? All of the names, all of the identifying information, all of the addresses of the witnesses who providing incriminating information about him. And then as Attorney General, he could use his powers to go after them. That is an enormous concern. He doesn't belong within 100 miles of the office of the Attorney General.
Now, think about the fact that he's been nominated. That means that there is a chance, and probably a better than 50% chance, that he does become the next Attorney General. No one's ever lost money betting against the fealty of this Republican Party to Donald Trump. He says jump, they say how high. And so most of them will say yes. So what are the collateral consequences of just this nomination being floated as far as the DOJ is concerned?
You know, it's funny, Brian, that may be the most damaging aspect of Donald Trump, you know, not nominating yet because he's not president. He can't officially nominate anybody, but of him naming his intent to nominate Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. There are about 110,000 employees at the Department of Justice, federal prosecutors, support staff, policy folks. You know, I know so many of them. They are my friends and former colleagues. I was at the department for more than 2 decades, and they are doing the hard work of the American people without regard to politics or ideology and without fear or favor, you know, day in and day out. I'll tell you, they do their work in an honorable, ethical manner. And I can promise you, the last thing these people would ever want to suffer is working for an Attorney General like Matt Gaetz. That would be demoralizing. Let me give you a little bit of my own personal background. I served continuously in the federal government as a federal prosecutor under every president from Reagan to Trump. And let me tell you, until Donald Trump and his corrupt Attorney General, Bill Barr, came to town, I never noticed any difference in the work I did, whether I was working under a Republican president or a Democrat. And they changed back and forth over the 30 years that I was a Fed, until Donald Trump and Bill Barr came in, corrupted and weaponized the Department of Justice, and frankly demoralized so many of us who, you know, lived and breathed the work of the Department of Justice. So here is my main concern. One of my main concerns when Donald Trump says, I intend to nominate Matt Gaetz. That will be so demoralizing and deflating and disheartening and depressing and other D words of the 110,000 employees of the Department of Justice that I fear, Brian, some of them may begin to self-select out of the Department of Justice, putting their resumes together, looking for other work. This can be for people who have been there 2, 3, 4 years, 10, 12 years, or 25, 30, 35 years, they may have said, I've had enough. I am not going to work under somebody like an Attorney General Matt Gaetz. So, we all know that Donald Trump, during his campaign, had been floating lots of ways to gut the Department of Justice, drive good people out, and put his own lapdogs, lackeys, flunkies, and sycophants into the Department of Justice. There was this Schedule F proposal where he was going to get rid of a whole bunch of mid-level people and then populate the Department of Justice and other government agencies with Donald Trump loyalists. We've all heard of Project 2025 and its mission to try to gut the Department of Justice. So this may be another way of accomplishing that, driving people out of the Department of Justice without Schedule F or Project 2025 ever having to fire a shot. Now, let me give you the flip side of that coin. The people of the Department of Justice don't scare easy, and they will not go, quietly into Donald Trump's dictatorship. So I'm hopeful that they will weather this storm. And let me give you one more data point, Brian, a bit of a collateral consequence, but also just my take on Donald Trump saying, yeah, I think I'm going to make Matt Gaetz the chief law enforcement officer for the nation. Donald Trump has named multiple members of Congress from both the House and the Senate to positions in his administration. Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik, and neither Marco Rubio nor Elise Stefanik resigned from Congress. But the very moment that Donald Trump said, I think I'm going to name Matt Gaetz, Matt Gaetz said, I resign from Congress. Matt Gaetz was just reelected, Brian. So why would he be the only one instantly resigning from Congress? It doesn't make any sense, right? Wait until your confirmation hearing, make sure, it's a done deal before you resign after just having won an election. Well, some of our viewers may already know this, but even though the Department of Justice declined to prosecute Matt Gaetz for the allegations of sex trafficking, the House Ethics Committee conducted a full investigation of Gaetz' misconduct, and they're literally within 24 or 48 hours of releasing it to the public, and there are rumblings it's going to be very damaging. However, if somebody resigns from Congress, guess what? The House Ethics Committee loses its jurisdiction over that person, and it can't issue the report. So this resignation after a Donald Trump announcement that he intends to make Matt Gaetz Attorney General may actually all be a ploy for Matt Gaetz to save face and say, I'm resigning from Congress, not because I'm trying to bury that deeply damaging ethics report that is about to be delivered, but because I don't know. I don't know what other reason he has offered for instantly
because he's just that certain that he's going to be confirmed as AG, and so he might as well not even have his seat anymore. Let's just get at the work of being Attorney General.
That could be, and you're a more creative thinker than I am.
Well, look, I guess the first thing that I think is worth asking here is, does the DOJ ever not indict even if a crime has been committed? Because they opted not to indict him. Meanwhile, the House Ethics Committee, which, by the way, is led by Republicans, obviously felt so strongly that there was something to work with here, that they kept this investigation going, and now we are seeing reporting that there is a highly damaging report set to be released, and so there's something there even as far as his own party is concerned. And so, what would explain the lack of definitive action by the DOJ?
A couple of things, Brian. It's not unusual, take it from a 30-year career prosecutor. Crimes are committed quite often, and there is never a charge brought. Sometimes the crimes aren't solved. We don't know who the perpetrator is. Sometimes we have strong evidence of who the perpetrator is. However, we don't have enough admissible evidence in court to actually secure an indictment. Sometimes we have enough to secure an indictment, but we don't believe we have a reasonable likelihood of success on the merits. In other words, a guilty verdict at trial. So there is this sliding scale, and the evidence moves up as you make your way through the criminal justice process. This is from a prosecutor's perspective. So, he may very well have committed crimes. Indeed, what we know is that a federal judge ruled there was probable cause that Matt Gaetz had